This is Governor's Council for our district, Joe Ferreira, who's been nice enough to come over from Somerset and join us today in the studio. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us, Joe.
Good afternoon, Chris. Thank you for having me. It's an extreme pleasure that I get to be on the radio with you today.
So, I've always been fascinated by the Governor's Council. I always think it's a unique part of government for Massachusetts. Most states, I don't think, have one.
Absolutely, you're right. It started only in 1780. Part of the John Adams wrote it into the Constitution. So we've been in existence for over 230 years, and it is peculiar to Massachusetts. I think there might be a couple of other states that have something similar, but generally, most states have the Senate that approves judicial nominations, and we're not like that at all.
And I think, you hear complaints every once in a while from people, but I think the Governor's Council is important simply because you have the legislature that controls the budgets for the judges. So if they were able to control both the budgets and who gets there, that's a lot of concentration of power. This is really a separation of powers and another level of government that keeps things smoother.
Sure. I like to call it checks and balances, right? So we're an independent body. We don't deal with making laws or anything like that or budgeting at all. We're strictly focused on judicial nominations. So every judge comes before us from any court, from the land court, juvenile court, all the way to the Supreme Court. We can talk about that. Any clerk magistrate that's not elected comes before us. We also do make notary publics and justice of the peace every week. If the governor wants to give someone a pardon or a commutation, that comes before us, and we have the final say, yes or no.
Okay.
We also appoint the appellate tax board. Parole board members, we don't appoint, but we say yes or no again.
Right.
So we have the final say on all those appointments. Every judge, every clerk magistrate, and those other officers that we talked about, very peculiar to Massachusetts. And like I said, it's it's almost like a fourth arm of government, so to speak. Right.
No, it's a very powerful and important position. As you say, John Adams created it and put it into our Constitution. Actually, I think it's a vestige of England, actually. But let's talk a little bit about you, Joe, so people who although you represent us, they may not know a little bit about you. I think you have an interesting and unique background. Let's talk about how you got into this and where you first started, on what side of the law you first started.
Sure. So I grew up in Somerset, went to Somerset High School. Then I wanted to, decided in high school that I wanted to be a police officer. So I pursued a degree. I graduated from Bryant University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Then I was fortunate enough to get a couple of part-time gigs as a police officer. So while I was in college, I worked at the Somerset Police Department, Swansea Police Department, and then I got on Berkeley Police Department right away as soon as I graduated. After about 7 months and after I got out of the academy for Berkeley, I then went to Somerset, where I started a career as a patrolman. There for about, I worked there for about 6 or 8 years when I decided I wanted to be a lawyer too.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to law school at night. I went to, which is now the University of Massachusetts Law School, then called Southern New England School of Law. So from 88 to 92, I went there, and upon graduation, I was, left with the decision like, hey, am I still going to be a cop, or do I want to be a lawyer, or do I want to do both? So thanks to a local judge, George Jacobs, who was one of my teachers and a mentor, he talked me into applying to be a Superior Court law clerk.
Okay.
So I didn't think I had any shot of getting it, but I applied, and I did get the job. So from 92 to 93, I took a break from police work, and I wrote decisions at the Superior Court, attended hearings. A phenomenal job. I worked for probably 25 different Superior Court judges over a year period in 8 different courthouses from here to Boston. Left there, it's a 1-year clerkship, which was, again, phenomenal change of trajectory of my life. Went to work for a law firm full time for a year. And really, wasn't that excited about representing insurance companies, to be honest with you.
Right.
So went back to police work, again as a patrolman. But stayed as a part-time lawyer. So, with the schedule you have as policing, I would work 4 days on, 2 days off, 4 days on, 2 days off.
Right.
So I'd focus my off time at the law office instead of working details.
Right.
So I did that for a lot of years. I rose through the ranks, became sergeant, detective sergeant, became a lieutenant, detective lieutenant. And then in 2005, I was fortunate to be appointed chief of police in Somerset. And, it was a phenomenal opportunity. I was the chief for 9 years. After putting 30 years on the force and 9 years as chief, I decided that I wanted to retire from that job anyway, and run for governor's council. I had helped Carol Fiola 15 years ago through a friend, and I went up when she got sworn in, and I thought it was fascinating that a person could have an impact on these judges who affect so many lives and what we do on an everyday basis.
Right.
So I decided I was going to do it, and I just put all my time and energy into running. It was a 4-way race. It's an expensive race. It's 47 communities.
Bigger than a congressional district.
It's bigger than, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you got it. So there are 8 of us. There are 9 congressmen. So, or Congress people. So I have about 800,000 constituents over 47 communities. I represent most of Bristol County, all of Dukes, the entire Cape and Islands, most of Plymouth County as well, all the way through Middleborough, but all the way up to Kingston, Pembroke, Plymouth. So it's a huge district, a lot of campaigning, a lot of miles. Went through 10,000 nail files and 10,000 pens. Right. Sometimes went to 4 events a night. And I'll tell you right now, the campaign cost over $100,000 to be able to, put up over 2,000 signs.
Yeah, it's incredible.
The radio time costs the most, of course.
Well,
Right?
it's the most valuable.
It's
Joe.
the most valuable.
You
right?
know that. It's the most valuable time.
But no, it was exciting, and so this is my 3rd year there,
Okay.
and I absolutely love it. It's very interesting, and I feel like we can make an impact and to make sure that we get the right judges, the right clerks, just helping people out. And for me, I take it very serious. I sit down with almost every single candidate before I vote on them. For instance, on Thursday, the lieutenant governor had something. I met her in the afternoon, and then I went to meet someone who was just nominated from Barnstable, Susan Tierney, to go to the probate court, and I met with her for a couple hours. A few days before that, I met with a gentleman who was nominated by the governor to go to the Superior Court. So I sit down with these people for a few hours, whether they're going to the juvenile court, the Superior Court, the district court, or the Supreme Court. I sit down with them and I speak with them and make sure that they agree with what I agree with, or what the reasonable people agree with, I should say. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're not going to agree on everything all the time, but I want to make sure that who I'm voting for, I know them, and I get a feel for them, and that's how we do it.
Well, I think that people who don't know you will be interested to know that you're bringing a more than 3 decades of law enforcement of experience to the table when you're talking to these judges. And I think some people are very frustrated with what they perceive as judges who are letting people out of jail. Now, you have no responsibility. Once you put them on the bench, they're there for life, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't see into the future. And I talk to other people on the council, and we get frustrated too when you hear some of these. I'd call them aberrations. Some of these judges doing 100 cases a day. And does some slip through the cracks now and then? Absolutely. Those are the ones that get sensationalized sometimes through the media, and sometimes they're just really bad decisions. But the way our Constitution is set up, and like that in the federal government as well, these, like you said earlier, they're lifetime appointments, mandatory retirement age 70. A judge can only be removed for bad, not even like a bad decision, but has to be bad behavior, or physical or mental incapacity.
Okay.
So they would be removed the same way they get on. The governor would nominate them to be removed, and the governor's council would have the final say whether they get removed or not. Oh,
that's interesting. See, that's why one of the reasons I wanted to have you in here, as we talked on the phone about, is I didn't know the process of how someone has ever been removed. And not to play Jeopardy here with you, but could you know the last time that happened?
We've given, so not because of that, but for infirmity in the last year, we gave 2 judges who were terminally ill. Okay. We gave them a quick retirement so that the families could be taken care of or whatever. They had earned it through the but we officially had to remove them so that someone could take their seat while they while they passed.
But that wasn't for bad behavior. That was because
no. But I did do research, and I don't remember. There have been a few in history,
right?
But not that many.
I can't remember any in the modern era. Just since I started painting. Now that doesn't mean there haven't been. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I nothing that I can recall where I have knowledge of the governor's council actually taking that vote. I think most of the time when it gets to that, when they're going to be impeached, so to speak, they step aside.
Okay, sure, of course. So, Sure. I'm speaking with Governor's Councilor Joe Ferreira, who comes out of Somerset, but represents from the Rhode Island line to P-Town, down the islands as well, and almost up, and certainly to the South Shore.
Yes.
Yep. Pembroke's a good way away from here.
It's a good ride.
You know that.
I know that.
You've driven there.
I've been to functions in Pembroke. Absolutely, yes.
Well, it's such a an interesting thing. We talk about the judges, but there are other things that you do as well up there that people don't really realize. For instance, the pardons.
Sure. Yeah. So we haven't done any yet with Governor Baker. Typically, a governor waits till the last week, right?
Right.
Or so on the way out the door before they want to commission pardons. Deval Patrick did some on his way out the door, and although I took office in January the following year,
Mm-hmm.
I went to the hearings. I had won the race, and I went to the pardon hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't anything atrocious. It was, for instance, a person that had been convicted of possessing marijuana when the laws were a little different, and inhibited this person from getting a job.
Okay.
So stuff like that. Nothing that was earth-shattering came
Right.
before the council. But there were probably about 8 that Deval Patrick did on the way out the door.
Yeah, I think the last big one, which was way before your time, I think was Bill Weld. There was a guy who had been involved in a shooting. I think his name was Yancey, and he had a fake. Of course, it all turned out he was a fake Vietnam veteran. He hadn't really been in Vietnam. He blamed post-traumatic stressors, and then it all came out. They put him right back in jail. I think that's the last time a governor even thought about pardoning somebody of a serious crime.
Yeah, well, I think Dukakis had some problems with pardons and,
Well,
and furloughs.
That's true, isn't it? Yeah, he did.
Yes.
Yes, there's a guy named Willie Horton.
Yeah,
I believe,
that rings a bell. Yeah, I think that cost an election maybe, or was pot and parcel.
I think he was letting half the New England Mafia out on weekends, actually.
Well, there was some problems with. I remember someone else getting pardoned, and it related back to the Rhode Island mob.
Yeah. There's that's true. The Governor's Council has had some colorful characters over the years.
Yeah, they have. Unfortunately, it was. It's people say it's powerful. No, it was more powerful. The governor, I think it was Dukakis, that said he couldn't go to the bathroom without asking the council.
Right.
But back in the day, like in the 50s and 60s, and still today, we signed the Treasury warrant every single week. $1.2 billion we sign off on every week to make sure every state employee gets paid.
So that people understand that, just like the Board of Selectmen in a town signs on for the warrant, the checks don't get cut unless you folks sign the warrant.
Right. But back in the day,
Yeah.
it was line item. So, if you were a contractor and weren't doing something that somebody liked or whatever, you weren't getting paid.
Really?
So I hear those horror stories. And in the mid-'60s, 4 or 5 governor's councils got indicted.
Mm-hmm.
And then they took away that power. So,
Okay.
So it's a perfunctory thing we do, but we do sign off on the Treasury warrant every single Wednesday.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can remember when I was on the Board of Selectmen, especially this time of year when vacations start going, you had to coordinate to make sure someone was around, because if you didn't have 2 signatures, they couldn't cut the checks.
Yeah, no one gets paid.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah, it's a real problem, especially if you're the person waiting for the check.
Right.
So we always made sure we got that done. That's good to know. I didn't realize. Again, that's another thing that I didn't realize. Tell me this, Counselor. If someone wants to become a judge,
Sure.
how does one become a judge?
So the first thing you do is, first of all, you should be a lawyer.
Okay, all right.
although it's not mandated, and there were some back in the day that weren't lawyers, but a lawyer would apply to a body called the JNC, Judicial Nomination Commission. So the governor, every governor that comes into office, appoints, since Dukakis actually, he started it, a 21-person board.
Okay.
So it's geographically balanced. So they'll have a couple from Springfield, a couple from Worcester, and so there's 21 people on this board of lawyers, and it's a bifurcated application you fill out. So the first part of the application just has your experience. They don't know who Chris McCarthy is, just that
Thank God.
They're going to know you were a selectman.
Right.
They're going to know you have a radio,
Yep.
talk show, radio, but they're not going to know your name. They're not going to know what school you went to, things like that. So this 21-person board looks at it, and then they independently vote on it.
So it's blind. They don't know.
It's blind, a blind
Oh,
review.
okay.
Blind review. And then they vote blindly on a computer. So each commissioner doesn't know what the guy next to them or the woman next to them voted yes or no.
And Mike Dukakis came up with this?
Yeah, in the 70s. In
Right.
the 70s. So if you're fortunate enough that they pass you, the blind review,
Mm-hmm.
then they get to look at, so you get notified that you're going to come in for an interview with
Okay.
the Judicial Nomination Commission.
Okay.
And, those people come from varied backgrounds as well. There's some probate people, some civil people, some criminal lawyers, some prosecutors. So it's a varied background. And then you're asked to come in for an interview. And you'll sit with them for 20 or 30 minutes, and, they've gone through your application, both sides now. And then if you make it through that interview, again, it's a blind review. And if you get the majority of their votes to go forward again, you then get assigned to due diligence. So one of those commissioners is assigned with doing a background check.
Okay.
So, I know a couple of commissioners, and I know that although it sounds light that, 20 or 30-minute interview, you're going to be a judge, now is the hard part, So I know commissioners that spend 30, 40 hours doing background checks, and not only calling the people that you want us to call on your application,
Right.
but trying to call the people that, you don't want us to call.
Right.
So, commissioners take it to heart, and, if you're a great lawyer, there might be a couple of people out there that don't like you no matter what.
Of course. Because adversarial profession, I mean, you're going to make enemies.
I can't believe it, but I think there's a couple of people that don't like me, Chris.
Oh, Joe, please stop.
It happens. But overall, they're going to get a great sense of, how smart you are, and more than that, what your temperament is.
Right.
And whether or not, they think you could, be okay as a judge.
Because how important is temperament to the job?
I think it's extremely important. I've been before judges, and I won't name them here on your talk radio show, but temperament to me is like number one. By the time you apply and you get through the process, everybody's wicked smart, So, we get that part of it. But, no one wants to be demeaned and disrespected, regardless of where, what you're doing in court or what court you're at, whether you're, a criminal or you're going through a divorce, or your kid gets in trouble in juvenile court, or you got a serious matter in superior court. Everyone needs to be treated with respect.
Yes.
And, there's no reason judges should be demeaning the litigants or the lawyers.
Right.
And I've seen it, and I hate it.
Right.
And those are the people that I wish I could remove. So I try not to appoint them, And, we always, again, let me finish the process.
Yeah.
So once you get through the JNC, you get through due diligence. If they say you're okay to go ahead, then you have an interview with the deputy legal counsel, whose name is Sharon Casey. Okay. She runs the JNC, so she's the governor's deputy legal counsel.
Okay.
So she will interview with Lon Pavich, who's general counsel to the governor.
Okay. Both
those people work intricately with the governor's counsel. They attend hearings after their nominees are nominated by the governor. So if Sharon and Lon Pavich like you, they recommend you go on for separate interviews with the lieutenant governor and the governor.
Okay.
So if they both think you should be a judge, at the end of the day, the governor will nominate you. And then the governor tells us on a Wednesday, hey, I nominated Chris McCarthy. Now, if Chris McCarthy, you live in my district, I then get to set your hearing date.
Okay.
I have to set it within 30 days.
All right. And
I will chair that meeting because you live in my geographical district.
Okay.
So now the governor's council has an independent hearing. I've seen them last anywhere from an hour to 6-7 hours, and we get to badger you. We can ask you anything and everything.
Right.
You don't have to answer. But, we don't have to vote for you.
Right.
But that's the process. And, in between, people, the first part of the process, they tell you can't, if you're a candidate, you can't call a JNC member. You can't call a governor's council.
Okay.
But once you're nominated, then I start to get calls from judges and clerks and other lawyers saying, hey, I think this guy's great. Hey, geez, how the heck did this guy ever get this far?
Right.
So, it runs a gamut. But for the most part, people are so well vetted before they get to us that, it's a little easier on us.
Sure. And so do you have, so as you point out, there's a process, but then at some point it becomes a little more political because now you know who they are and what they're going to do. When do you first get a sense of who the governor is going to nominate? Do they poll it all?
So I try to encourage great people to apply, first of all. So I'm not going to lie to you and say that I haven't whispered in people's ears saying, hey, I think Chris McCarthy is a great guy, and I would love to see him nominated, Can
you just repeat that again?
I said Joe Ferreira is a great guy, and he would vote for Chris McCarthy.
Right. Your last vote.
But
so
no, absolutely. Yeah. So do I advocate for people? Absolutely. I meet the lieutenant governor comes into our room. She doesn't sit through the hearings, but she comes into our room every single Wednesday, exactly at noontime, and we'll vote on last week's nominees. So if we had a hearing last Wednesday, which we did, we had 2 hearings. We've been to 2 a week. She will call. First of all, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance and have a prayer. Then we're going to vote on the notary publics for the week, and there's probably 50 from my district made every single week.
Really?
Made or renewed, because it's,
okay.
It's a 6-year seat. Then We vote on justice of the peace.
Mm-hmm.
So those, just to speak quickly about those are by statute, how many you can have in every town. Like the city of New Bedford has 19.
Okay.
Somerset will have 5. So it's by population.
Okay, sure.
So we vote, and then, they're renewed every 7 years. So we vote on the notary public's justice of the peace. We sign off on a treasury warrant, and then the lieutenant governor will call for a roll call vote of the judicial nominees whose hearing was the week before.
Okay.
So we'll go around the table. Ferreira, how do you vote? Jubenville, and go right around the table.
So there's a week between between the hearing,
yes,
and then the vote.
Right.
So you don't hold the hearing, then vote. You have there's a period of time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
There's generally a week, sometimes 2 weeks, but generally a week.
Okay.
And then the person's done. You're a judge. It's a lifetime appointment.
Right.
But before that,
And they never talk to you again after that.
they never talk to me again. Yeah. Sometimes the robe chafes the back of their neck, and they turn into different people. We try to predict, how they're going to act, but no. Actually,
If you want to get rid of a friend, just make him a judge.
Yeah. It can be a lonely. Depending on what court you're sitting on.
Yeah.
Because they can no longer. They love it. They don't have to buy a ticket to go to any political events anymore.
Right. They can't. Right.
They can't. They're prohibited from being involved in politics. They can't lunch with lawyers. So it can be a little isolating.
Mm-hmm.
Once you become a judge, depending on what court you're on. So after I know that someone's in the process, and I think that someone's great, do I talk to the lieutenant governor and say, hey, or Sharon Casey and say, hey, I think I heard,
Right.
And yeah, absolutely, I advocate for great people. And on the other hand, if I think someone is terrifically horrible, and I hear about it, I'm geez, I hope that person never comes before us.
Right.
Because we don't need people with bad temperament on the bench.
Well, we who elect you, you're our representative to oversee the judiciary.
Absolutely.
I mean, that if you weren't doing that, that would be irresponsible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if you weren't saying, hey, look, this is a person I'd like in the New Bedford District Court, or this is a person I like in the probate, or someone you say, hey, I don't want this person here.
No, and not to overgeneralize, but for the most part, I mean, not for the most part, but not that I'm saying bad things about big corporate people from Boston, but I don't want the big corporate lawyer from a big firm in Boston being the New Bedford District Court judge that we don't know anything about, can't trust. And we don't have a feel for how he or she is going to respond. So I am a big fan, and I'm going to bring some people down from Boston on the JNC to run a seminar on how to become a judge.
Oh, fantastic!
Because I encourage people now, but some people don't know. Some people are afraid, and quite honestly, the Governor's Council has had some bad hearings where people don't want to put their name out there, and they don't want to get beat up, and so it's understandable. But I am a huge fan of local judges for local jobs in local courts. Right.
No, I mean I can name guys I knew who were lawyers who are now sitting in the district court, and you'd much rather see those guys there.
I hope
men or women.
I hope they're doing a good job.
Of course they're doing a good job. I said I knew them. I would deny knowing them, Joe, if they weren't doing a good job. But you're right. I mean, you need that because again, it's very local, and you'd like to have local people who know the environment. And you're right. Just if they're living in Wellesley and commuting down to Fall River to decide on what goes on in Fall River, and then they get back in the car and go to Wellesley where those problems never touch them. It's a bit out of touch.
No, absolutely. And and I could say there have been over the last, believe it or not, so I've been on for 2 years, and this is my 5th month, right?
Mm-hmm.
I voted on 63 judges.
Wow.
Which is phenomenal.
It's phenomenal. Talk a little bit about what's going on at the top court in our state, Supreme Court, and how Charlie Baker's got all these picks.
Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. So since 1780, there's no governor that's had the opportunity to appoint, which will now be number 5. He's going to nominate someone in June.
Out of how many judges?
7.
There's 7.
So there are 7 on the Supreme Judicial Court, which is, highly regarded as, one of the best state Supreme Courts in the country. And Charlie Baker's had an opportunity now to fill 4 slots. And I am proud to say that, elated to say that just on Thursday evening, I was able to attend the public ceremony of Elizabeth Cipher. So Elizabeth Cipher was she's a resident of Freetown.
Mm-hmm.
First time in over 100 years that Bristol County has had anyone on the Supreme Judicial Court.
Amazing. So
Elizabeth Cipher, she's been sitting on the court now for a couple of months, but her ceremony was Thursday, and again we got all those Boston people, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the chiefs of the chief of the probate court there, the chief of the superior court there. maybe 10 appeals court judges, a couple of other judges from the Supreme Court. They all came to UMass Dartmouth. So she wanted to have it in Bristol County, which was superb. So I was elated to be part of that process. Because she lived in my district, I got to ask questions first and be part of the process, a big part of the process, which was fun. But the other three people that Charlie Baker has nominated, again, I had one of them come and meet me at Cinderella's restaurant in Fall River. You know, and the police chief happened to be there, and other people. And then I had another Supreme Court justice come to meet me, a nominee at that point.
Okay.
At the Mesa 21 in Fall River.
Right.
I got to bring the next one in New Bedford.
Yes, please. Or Fairhaven.
Or Fairhaven.
Right.
But I try to get them down here and see, you know, and they're amazed. You know, they see the waterfront. They've never actually been down here before.
Right.
And, you know, they get to see the people, the culture, the waterfront. And it's great. So now for the Elizabeth Cipher, she was an appellate court person that worked for the Bristol County DA's office for 15 years. So she, you know, if the Commonwealth lost on appeal, she represented the Bristol County DA's office on appeals for 15, 16 years. After that, Governor Cellucci made her a member of the appeals court.
Okay.
And she wrote over 1,000 decisions.
Wow.
In the appeals court. She was extremely talented, extremely well thought of by all members of the judiciary, and Governor Baker saw fit to nominate her. Before that, the last three, Justice Gaziano, Justice Lowy, and Justice Budd. All three were former prosecutors. All three were Superior Court judges when Governor Baker nominated them. So now we have 4 former prosecutors on the highest court, and we're looking forward to Governor Baker's nomination in June, and we will have our hearing on that nominee on July 12th, and then we'll vote the week later on July 19th on whether to confirm or say no to Governor Baker nominee, you know, his fifth choice to the Supreme Judicial Court. So he's shaping the court not only for now but for decades to come.
Right.
You know, these people they're going to be on the court. You generally, you know, they can serve until they're 70. Some leave early. But for the next couple of decades, Charlie Baker's got his thumbprint on that court.
It's really amazing. As you point out, it's been how long since anything like that's happened?
I think it's historical. I think it's the first time that a governor's been able to put on 5 in a year. I mean, it's just phenomenal, just you know, incredible.
And it's nice to see that we have someone finally from Bristol County. Would you say it's been 100 years since someone from Bristol County?
100 years, and I could tell you, you know, like I said, do I whisper? Yeah, I actually, yeah. You know, every 6 months or so, the governor will bring us out for an independent lunch. Just he and a governor's counselor.
Okay.
And the same thing with the lieutenant governor. You know, we'll have private lunches, and you know, I said, I want to see. You know, I want to see Elizabeth Cipher made. You know,
right.
I mean, I know she's in the running, and
right.
And I advocate, and it was terrific. I'm not saying that's why she got it. She deserved to get it.
Right.
But you know, if everybody chips in a little bit, and you got the governor's ear, it's helpful and it's exciting. It's good.
It's fantastic. It's really historical. As you say, 100 years.
100 years. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. Listen, we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back because I want to talk to you about what's it like working with Governor Baker. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll take a quick break though here, and then we'll be right back. And good afternoon. This is Sunday Brunch. I'm Chris McCarthy. We're honored to have in the studio with us Governor's Councilor Joe Ferreira, who represents our area, who represents all of southeastern Massachusetts, essentially, right?
Yes.
How far? Do you represent Lakeville?
I do.
And do you have Taunton?
I have Taunton. So the way it's broken down, Chris, is there are 8 of us, and there are 40 senators. So I have precisely the same cities and towns as 5 senatorial people, so 5 senators. So I have the Cape Senator, the Plymouth Senator, the Taunton Senator, the New Bedford Senator, and the Fall River Senator's districts. So I have 5 senators in my district and 20 state reps.
Wow. That's it's a lot of people. It's bigger than the congressional district. You have more territory than Senator Keating, than Congressman Keating has.
I do. Yeah, I have probably several more towns, and I don't know, maybe 50,000 more people. Wild
stuff. And you're our guy as far as taking care of the judiciary down here.
I do everything I can to take care of the judiciary, absolutely.
Tell us, I believe you're a Democrat.
Yes.
I didn't ask by sense because you got elected down here, you were.
You're a smart guy.
Yeah. I've run as a Republican. I know how it works. It's just sad at the end. But you work with Governor Baker, who is nominally a Republican.
Yes.
What's the relationship like? What's it like working with Governor Baker?
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Like you said, nominal Republican. So, when you listen to, I sit with Charlie Baker, and when you hear him say, and when he spoke the other day at Justice Cypher's event, the ceremonial event last Thursday in Bristol County at UMass Dartmouth, he talked about why he chose her. And one of the things he mentioned, and he made a big deal about it, is she's openly gay.
Right.
She was married to a man, and now lives with a woman. She's openly gay. Charlie Baker's brother's openly gay. So, when you hear him talk about that, hear him talk about he's pro-choice.
Mm-hmm.
The gun issue, I really haven't heard him talk about it, so much either way.
He doesn't want a primary. That's why he's not talking about it.
I just read someone else's, the Newton mayor's running against him. I read that today.
Yeah, said he won.
But he's been great to deal with. I'll tell you what, we talked about temperament for judges.
Right.
Now, that guy, before he does the State of the State address, we all meet in his office together.
Okay.
And you would think like you were going to the beach for the day.
Right.
When Charlie Baker's about to give the State of the State, I mean, nothing, he's unflappable.
Right.
Nothing rattles him. He's unflappable. He's just, even-tempered guy. And a nice guy to talk to or have a meal with. Just relaxed. And, like I said, none of his views have, throttled me and said, oh, my God, how can that guy think like that? And his nominations have been, a couple have been a little to the left, I think, not many. Some a little to the right, but mostly centrist. I mean, he's not about party affiliation at all.
Right.
Sometimes I look at a judicial application, and they have to disclose all political contributions.
Right.
And I've seen a couple come through where they'll have 20 contributions to Elizabeth Warren and
right.
and all these staunch Democrats, and they get nominated by Charlie Baker. So
those are the ones Howie Carr writes columns about.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Those judicial forms, those disclosure forms, are fantastic for journalists.
Well, they're openly transparent, right?
Right.
So there's a JNC application, then the Governor's Council has a separate application.
Okay.
So by the time you come through as you have opened your life, totally, it's an open book, and after due diligence is done, we should know everything about you.
Well, yeah, for a lifetime appointment. But you just pointed out, Joe, and I want to get back to this for a second. You're looking to put on a seminar down here for people who are interested in becoming judges or getting into the process.
Yeah,
right?
and I definitely will. I've already spoken to the chief counsel to the governor, Lon Povich. There's a guy who gave up his job, probably making 7 figures in a year, not 6. He was general counsel to BJ's Wholesale, but he worked under the Weld administration. And when Charlie Baker became the governor, the guy probably took a $900,000 pay cut to work for the governor. All about public service. So kind of interesting. I've talked to him. I talked to Sharon Casey, the deputy legal counsel, who runs the JNC that we talked about earlier. And I talked to some JNC members, and I've talked to some judges that we just put on. Doug Dombrow is now sitting down in Wareham as a Rehoboth person.
Okay.
I talked to him. I talked to Tracy Souza, who just, a year ago got put on the juvenile court and she lives in Rehoboth. So I talked to local people, and we want to have a panel and a discussion so that, you want to become a judge. This is the process. This is how you apply. We need great people from this area to apply. We have some vacancies coming up right now, 2 in the Superior Court coming up immediately. And we want local people filling those slots, absolutely.
And that's good, because if you don't know, as you point out, sometimes it can look, because people get savaged sometimes, whether it's right or wrong, it just happens in these processes sometimes. And if you don't demystify it, it's going to sometimes keep good people from putting their name forward.
Oh, absolutely. Again, there are sometimes an aberration, but and sometimes with cause, sometimes without cause. But some counselors have, totally gone after, some of the people that applied at our hearings, and you read about it, and you can Google it, and it got ugly for a little while. But thank God I had those 30 years of police experience. So
right.
You can't, I don't get bullied easy. I don't get bullied at all, actually.
Right.
So I don't want any of my counselors tell me how to vote or what to say or what to ask, because I'm my own independent guy.
When you are looking at someone to whether you're going to vote yes or no, because that's your decision, how important is that law enforcement background and how it shapes your outlook on people?
Well, it's important to me. It's important, especially again, depending on what court they're going for. So if you're going to the probate and family court, I don't need to know your views on sentencing, right?
Right.
I mean, it can be a sentence in probate court, but but I don't need to know I don't need to know your views about incarceration or minimum mandatories and things like that. But it's important that you get a feel of what people are going to do on the bench when they're, especially district court judges. They're doing 100 cases a day, community people that are going to be living in your community, whether they go to jail for 2.5 years or not. That's the most they can sentence to generally. But those are the people that get their finger on the pulse of the community, and you want to know what they're going to do. With the person who comes before them for an array of crimes, make sure they're going to give adequate bail where bail should be requested and definitely dealt with a heavy hand sometimes. So it's important to know, again, their whole attitude, what their temperament is, and what they've done in the past. To me, the past is always a good predictor of the future, right?
Yes.
So the past and how they've dealt with cases as a lawyer. And, generally people that we're putting on the bench have, I would say at least 20 years experience in the field. Okay. So you speak to their, people that they've tried with, people that they've tried against. I can speak with the judges. I speak with judges all the time, saying, "Hey, Chris McCarthy's been before you 16 times. What do you think?" And
I found him not guilty every time.
That's why you're still doing the talk radio show.
Right.
But it's important. It's important. But again, by the time all these different people have vetted you, and one thing I left out actually is. Usually before, but sometimes right after the governor nominates you, it goes to the Joint Bar Association too. Okay. So that's another group. Those are people, they're members, usually the president of the local bar association. So Bristol County will have 1 or 2, Worcester has 1 or 2. Okay. And the Joint Bar will review, again, another due diligence and a review, and they'll give you favorable, highly favorable, or unfavorable rating. It's not pressing on the governor to go along with that recommendation, but it is a recommendation, and I have not seen the governor put anyone up who's got an unfavorable recommendation from the Joint Bar Association.
Really, they're a block. If the bar isn't for them.
No, if the bar isn't for them, the governor could still go forward with them.
But generally,
and that would send a message to us.
Okay.
Again, it's not. We're not stuck with their recommendation, but I haven't seen anyone who's got a bad recommendation be put forward before us, because I don't think that would play out well. Right.
What I'm hearing here, Councilor, is that it's an involved process, and there's a lot of people looking at them before they get this lifetime appointment.
Oh, absolutely, and it should be. I mean, we see every day in the newspapers what decisions these judges are making on a regular basis, and they should be extremely well vetted, and they are. It's quite a process that we have in place in Massachusetts.
Talk a little bit about pardons. If someone had something in the past, like you point out marijuana, I think that's a good example to use. Whether you want it to be here or not, culturally, it's really changed. Certainly from when you became a police officer to where we sit today, it's an entirely different world on the question of marijuana. If someone was out there, they had a prior possession charge, and it's interfering with their life, how would one go about getting rid of that, getting that expunged?
So, there are rules, and I've never actually, done one of those as a lawyer, to be honest with you, but there are rules that 5 years after, I think it's 5 years after conviction of a misdemeanor, you can go before the court and you fill out paperwork, and sometimes you don't even need a lawyer, I understand, to get it expunged or sealed. Then 10 years after a felony conviction, you can do the same. But the other choice is to ask for a pardon from the governor. So all pardons go through the parole board, and like I said, we say yes or no to every parole board members, and we've probably put on 3 or 4 at this point. There are 7 people on the parole board in Massachusetts. And
you've already put 3 or 4 under Governor Baker.
Right. So those are renewals too.
Oh, okay.
Except when he came in, he told the chairperson to step down, and he put his own chairperson in right away. But they come up every 5 or 7 years before us, and again, people weigh in on those appointments as well. But you apply to the parole board for a pardon, then they give you the thumbs up or down. But they're literally, you hear about them. There's thousands of applications pending that the parole board's not acting on. Okay. But it's up to the governor to say, hey, I want a pardon,
Let's not use my name this time.
Joe Ferreira.
All right, let's go Joe Ferreira.
All right, I want a pardon Joe Ferreira, but he hasn't come to that conclusion yet. And he hasn't wanted to pardon anyone. And like I said earlier,
really, he hasn't pardoned anyone.
No, not one. And it's not unusual. They wait till they leave office generally.
Right, that's
just
true.
Like the president.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's waiting as he leaves the door.
Right. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I think Governor Baker will probably get another term, although you never know. I think people are maybe overthinking that Governor Baker's a shoo-in for, but who knows at this point. So if someone's out there, they can apply to the governor, but as you point out, he's not doing anything right now.
Right.
So if you're in the audience, I'm sorry at this point. You're
Yeah,
you're
chance
stuck.
of getting a, again, based on history,
Right, right.
chance of getting a pardon anytime soon, and not very good. But again, I can't speak for the governor. You'd have to call the governor's office or the
Right.
parole board.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we have the ultimate say. The governor nominates you for a pardon or a commutation. So commutations, if you're in jail, and we vote yes, you get out of jail,
Right.
as opposed to a pardon, you've served your time. So we have the ultimate say, yes or no.
Too bad Governor's Councilor Coakley isn't there anymore. Wasn't that the one who pardoned Patriarca?
I don't know if it was Coakley, but yeah, Patriarca was pardoned by the governor's council, and it caused some headlines.
It's a famous story here in Massachusetts. Yeah, funny stuff.
you're-
Raymond Patriarca, alleged head of the New England Mafia. He's long since shed his mortal coil, but the legend still lives. It still lives on.
I think there's a book written about it. You're very good with your history.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
The Governor's Council has always been fascinating to me because it's a neat body, as you point out. It goes way back to John Adams, and I've heard people call to abolish it before, but
Sure,
it doesn't make any sense to me to abolish it because all you do is end up concentrating power in fewer hands.
Yeah, like I said, some states have the Senate, so you always get that argument, should the Senate be doing it or not? And then, would there be jockeying or trading off because they do the budget? And, so, you always hear these things about different people with different ideas. But, it would take a constitutional amendment to change it. So hopefully it's not done for a while because, I believe in it. I believe it's a good process. Again, it's been around for 230 years. And, you were right. It came from England where, out there, when they gave... when people came over here and formed government, they said the governor shall have counselors. And, if you read the early, treaties or, whatever documents, that led to this, they talk about governor and counselors, and it's stuck. It's stuck, and it's been that way for 230 years.
Absolutely. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're joined here for the remaining moments of the show with Governor's Councilor Joe Ferreira. And thank you for joining us. This is Sunday Brunch. I'm Chris McCarthy. We're doing this interview with Joe Ferreira, who's our governor's counselor here. And if you missed any of it, we'll put it up on WBSM on the YouTube site. You go to YouTube, look at WBSM, and then also, Joe, you're available on Facebook, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, if you just Google me, Joe Ferreira, Governor's Council. You can friend me on Facebook. I'd be glad to do that. Perfect.
Hey, tell us a little bit about what your relationship is like and what your reflection is on how Karen Polito and the governor feel about our area.
I think they've been remarkably receptive. I don't think we have seen any governor or lieutenant governor physically show up and bring money more than Charlie Baker and Karen Polito. Just Thursday, she was down in New Bedford. I met her here at Moby Dick's. They had a little event for her. She's chairing the Seaport Council, so she's brought numerous funds down to New Bedford and Fall River. Just Thursday, she announced there's another $80 million available, and encouraged people in New Bedford to apply for it, especially for dredging and things like that. So they've really paid attention. I can tell you, I've personally been with her in Fall River 4 or 5 times, and the governor's been to Fall River and New Bedford. I took a boat last summer with Karen Polito, went to Cuttyhonk, and she delivered $1 million check to Cuttyhonk to help them with their problems on a tiny little island. So they are, they love the South Coast. They love the Seaport area. They love visiting. They love, and Karen Polito is from Shrewsbury,
right?
And and she says it in all of her speeches. Hey, Boston's fine. Boston's gonna be fine.
Right.
I'm about other cities and towns outside of Boston doing well.
Right.
And she's done these community compacts, which I know New Bedford signed on to.
Lakeville just did one. Yep.
Lakeville, so she's done 285 out of 351. And they're like 1,000 best practices for cities and towns to follow. And if you do that, you get points when you apply for grants.
Right.
So she's come down. She signed community compacts. They're invested, and hopefully something works out with this rail, down the road, right? Because we're about to sue Governor Weld when he said sue me, right? We're about to sue him, I think.
That train. So I was just going to say as we wrap up here. So in addition to all the responsibilities as a governor's council, the fact that you're able to meet with the governor or the lieutenant governor on a weekly basis allows you to also whisper to them about other things other than just within the purview of the governor's council.
Absolutely. Senators and reps ask me sometimes to convey messages or to, try to get them to do this or come down here. And, yeah, absolutely, So that is one of the advantages, with, Lieutenant Governor at least every single Wednesday and the governor from time to time as well. So, it is great access to whisper in their ear and say, hey, what about us?
Absolutely. Well, listen, I want to thank everyone for joining us in the audience. I really want to thank you, Councilor. Joe Ferreira, for coming into the studio with us today to talk about the judicial nomination process. We won't. We hope you won't be a stranger. Well, you're not a stranger to us, but we hope you'll be back in the future and keep us informed about that. What's coming up with a seminar on the governor. I'm going to